Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we look at episode 3 of the Ancient Magus Bride, which is the end of the OVA series. It's important to know that, folks, because as many of you may or may not know, in October, I believe, the actual series of the Ancient Magus Bride will be releasing out. It's going to be 13 episodes, but this is the OVA series that kind of leads into that. Now, I will say right now, I loved the show. It is a show, obviously. It's an OVA series, 3 episodes. I have issues with it. And it's namely not because the show's quality or anything like that. I think that, hands down, if I'm going to review, because I'm reviewing obviously the whole show as it is, hands down, I'll tell you right now, the graphics and animation of the Ancient Magus Bride OVA series was phenomenal, to say the least. This is on quality of something I would expect from movies that, you know, maybe you can see from like Studio Ghibli. That's how much I love the various art and the kind of way everything moves and stuff like that. It's just animated very, very well. And I love the story. I think it was very nice. I think it had some issues in part 3, which I'll talk more about in a couple moments, but you know, for the most part, it was a really cool ride, and it was really interesting to see the characters and stuff like that. Now, I think I'm going to first talk about episode 3, and then I'll talk about the issues I had with the OVA series. Now, as a whole, episode 3 has it where we finally see the kind of end of the library where our main redheaded girl came from, and or sorry, is from. Now, the thing with the library is that because the librarian actually was killed, you know, essentially almost killed, you know, he can't keep the library afloat anymore. And we learn more about that as the episode progresses, that he kind of was linked to the library. It was part of him at one point. But he asks the redheaded girl if she can do him one favor and to give the book that he's been holding on to for this whole time back to the girl that I think he really was in love with, but didn't have the same didn't have the same way of showing her how he felt about her, and I think got lost in the library when he actually discovered it himself. But what's interesting though is that I think that it felt overall a little bit too fast how they kind of concluded this episode. You know, what was really surprising was the fact that the lady is super old. So we learned that our main character, or not main character, but more so our main librarian, was actually basically ancient at that point. He had, I guess, when he died, the library had fallen apart because he was attached to it for so long. And you see that the librarian was basically unaging until the very end, where he fell to dust. Meanwhile, the girl that he was in love with, he also took the book to, and he planned to deliver the book back to, basically is old and in our deathbed. She's dying. And it looks like, if I had to guess her age, probably in her maybe 80s, around that roughly. So a lot of time's been passing, and he probably was so attached to the library that it became part of him. And I don't know if that was a curse or if that was meant to be just a thing that he got enveloped in, because I mean, if you notice, when he actually first discovers the library, he's like enamored by it, and his eyes even change to like a weird red color when he starts reading one of the books. So I presume that the library kind of took hold of him, and it in many ways was a cursed place. But he made it into a place that was meant to, you know, house all the monsters so they could read. And, you know, obviously our redheaded girl was found that place as a kind of solace from her outside world, etc. But, you know, he tasks her with, you know, giving the book back to the lady. That's how she finds out how old she is, etc. Now, this is a story that she's been telling, you know, her, I want to say that skull-headed dude that may or may not be her bride or like master or whatever. I don't even know what I presume the main story will actually talk more about that. And I know manga fans out there, you probably are like, no, that's this person, that's what the... Remember, this is the OVA. I'm going off the OVA. I didn't read the manga myself, but the OVA really doesn't describe the relationship between them as anything more than kind of like a servant and a master in many ways, or a teacher and a student. It hasn't gone in too much further beyond that. I mean, I know it's the Ancient Magus Bride, so I presume that she is like destined to be with this dude, but I'm going to presume the actual anime will go more into detail about that, because they really didn't focus on how they basically met. And what they focused on was showing how her life kind of led up to certain events that I'm going to presume are going to start off in the actual series. Now, here's the problem with Ancient Magus Bride. First and foremost, because it's scattered between so many months, as we all know, you tend to forget a lot of details. Unless you're watching this and you decided to binge watch all 3 episodes, which is probably a good course of action, I think, to be honest with you. It's only 24 minutes each episode, and I think that's probably the best way to do it, because it makes it like essentially a movie. But if you don't do it that way, you're getting it in the way I got it, which is how I'm reviewing it, because I want to do that on purpose. I will rewatch the whole show, and I maybe will readjust my score in my mind, but as it is, this is how I want to review it because this is how it was releasing. This is the same issue that I had with the Kubikiri cycle, which releases every month, and they've had like 3-month skips sometimes with how many episodes actually come out. It takes a long time. When shows like that happen, it causes the memories of what you're watching to kind of fade away. And that's only if you're, first off, not maybe able to remember every single piece of information like I am. I can't remember crap about the show beyond certain aspects. I remember the librarian, I remember what happened to him, but I didn't remember, like, what her name was. I didn't remember why she was even, I forgot she was even telling the story about this. I remember, like, when they started finally talking about that more, that's the reason why this was happening. But I feel that this was a kind of improper way of doing this. I feel like it would have been better to have this in September, releasing every week up to October, because I think then you'd be fresh going into it. Like, oh, now I get a week break, which would have been perfect, and then you get right into it in October, because I presume it's going to come out the first week of October, and you can start watching it weekly. I think that would have been the best way to handle this, but Wit Studio decided to spread this out over the course of several months, which may or may not have been an issue, I think, with a lot of people, and I think that with me, it's probably one of my biggest issues with this whole thing. But I digress. Just because of that, I want you to understand Ancient Magus Bride is still a phenomenal story. It has some great animations, like I said before. The music has always been a great thing. I think it fits every single mood. It has this perfect ambiance to it that really fits us into the situations and scenarios we see our characters in. I love the whole kind of way it was. Episode 3, like I said, was a little weaker because I think it just kind of ends on a very quick note. But overall, this was a great OVA series, and I think it was only hampered by the kind of way that they ended it and also the way they were spacing it apart. That's why if I had to review the Ancient Magus Bride from episodes 1 to 3, if I had to rate it between an A through F, I give it an A- hands down. I think it's a phenomenal show. I think you definitely need to watch it if you plan on watching the OVA series, or the real series I should say, because it's a good way to start off, I believe. And also just because it's a great animation. I mean, honestly, this is something that could be in the movie theaters and pass off as something that Studio Ghibli did, for example. That's just my opinion. I would love to know, though, guys and girls, tell me in the comments below, what were your thoughts of the Ancient Magus Bride now that it's concluded. As always, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe button, share button, etc. Check out my Patreon for more rewards, etc. And as always, until our paths cross again in the next review, have a good one, everyone. I have not gotten to say that line in a long time, but as you know, I always say it at the end of my actual review, or like my main series reviews. But anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye, everyone.